Right, so there have been various changes to Tower Defense Simulator that the developers have not told us. One of them, actually, being to the skip buttons in Tower Defense Simulator. So previously, when I talked about this UI update, I talked about the fact that when the skip vote button appears, or the ready button appears, it says that everyone in the server needs to skip it. So, for example, there is one, I mean, to be fair, this is a bad example because I'm playing on solo, but imagine, right, there were 2 players here. The skip vote button would come down and it would display 0 out of 2. However, it is the case where only one person needs to actually skip it if there are 2 players on the server. In fact, it is the case where when it comes to skip voting and for ready buttons, there needs to be everyone in the server -1 compliant and pressing that button. Otherwise, it doesn't skip. However, you do not actually need everyone in the server to actually comply with that. Now, obviously, this doesn't apply for solo servers because in solo servers, you are the only person that's required. So this is actually correct. However, it is now correctly displayed if there are more than 2 players in a server. The skip wave options and the ready buttons, in the game at least, are correct. This was a change that I made in the 1.68.1 release, which means that I have to assume that they watched my video and thought, yes, let's just fix a bug that's been in the game since, I believe, the Overwar update. Which is really weird that they decided to fix it just now, but fair enough. Now, this doesn't apply for the ready and the veto buttons here because this requires compliance from all players, not just everyone -1. So this has always been correct. But the skip votes and the ready icons after you vote for a map, those have been corrected in v 1.68.1. However, in v 1.68.2, we actually don't know what's changed. What we do know is there is kind of a new bug in the game. So you see these UI icons here in the lobby. Yeah, for some reason, they now extend all the way to the bottom, and you can see what these buttons are for. These are actually the setting, the news icons, and the login icons. So for some reason, these icons up here, they've just stretched down all the way to the bottom, covering the entire screen. And apparently it's only been occurring since this update. That being said, there were some issues with this in the Hexscape event, which I probably have to assume that it's something to do with another button being up here for the Roblox catalog, which was available at the time. Yeah, you could buy stuff from the Roblox catalog through another UI button here. But ever since the Hexscape update, there's not been an issue with these buttons being stretched down all the way to the bottom until now. So something in v1.68.2 has broken it, apparently. V1.68.2 could also have been something to do with matchmaking because the developers modified matchmaking slightly in the main game. However, it is not confirmed what V1.68.2 update was actually. Now, in some other Shadow Update news, the developers have fixed an issue where fireworks generated from the Duck Necromancer, the Mecha Bunny Cowboy, and the Springtime Cowboy, fireworks generated by these skins, they used to break the skin entirely. So that means that these towers would no longer be able to attack, and visually, this is not just visual, this is also statistical, these towers would not be able to attack. However, that is no longer the case. These towers, when they generate their fireworks, they no longer break. As you can see, the Bullock has been shot by a firework from the Duck Necromancer and the Mecha Bunny Cowboy, and it's not breaking, so they have fixed that. Additionally, there was a bug where fireworks generated by towers with the new rig, which is what these towers were, the Duck Necromancer, the Mecha Bunny Cowboy, the Springtime Cowboy, and a whole bunch of other towers, such as the Biologist Tower, such as the Swarmer Tower, they've been updated to a new rig. Now, this is more of a Roblox thing, implementing some new feature that Tower Defense Simulator has taken advantage of. However, this does mean that there are a load of glitches, and I've already talked about a load of them in the past, and developers have sort of gotten around to fixing some of them, but not all of them. It's still quite a buggy rig. However, in this case, you've seen that these towers, they're able to visually show the firework that is generated from them, because previously, these were invisible. You could not be able to see them, and it seemed like these towers were not able to generate fireworks, which is not the case because the firework is attached to the firework technician, and we saw previously that the total damage from these towers was going up. However, they have now fixed it so that the firework is now visual. You can see it dealing damage to enemies. Next, alongside a whole host of bug fixes that have been implemented for the Hacker Tower, they've also fixed the lead tower damaging lead enemies. Now, the Hacker Tower is not able, or should not be able, to damage lead enemies because it doesn't have lead detection. I mean, for some reason it has the firework buff here, even though the firework technician is sold. What? How does it have it? What? The firework technician is... Oh my god, is this another issue with the firework technician with the new rig? I'm sure this is already reported and I'm just being stupid. So anyways, the Hack Tower it's no longer able to deal damage to lead because the developers have fixed its damage type. Previously, it used to be an energy damage type, which, to be fair, the Hacker Tower kind of does use energy types, especially with the synapses here. However, the developers didn't realize that giving energy type would mean that it would be able to damage lead. So they've changed it over into the normal damage type, so that means it's no longer able to damage lead, as seen here. I'm still very confused why the firework buff is still here, even though I've sold my firework technician. And additionally, there is a new question mark here, which is really odd because this question mark has apparently not been seen elsewhere. So I can only assume that it must be something to do with upgrades. Okay, so yes, so it seems like there is a new update, which might have been in this recent update, v1.68.2, where the developers have added a question mark right next to the upgrade box, even though clicking it does not do anything, and it's just a random question mark. Upgrades. Hover over the upgrades of your stats. We already do that, and you can already see that what the stats are. It's not like the question mark is linked to an ability, because the Necromancer doesn't have it. Okay, so if I get the Firework Technician, and then, yes, these have firework buffs now, and then I sell the tower. Yeah, for some reason... So the Hacker Tower now loses the firework buff. Why did it have it before? I'm so confused. This game is very, very buggy, as you can see. So yes, apparently it's the case where this question mark here thing, it's new. It wasn't in this update previously. I don't know why. I think this might be an implemented feature that the developers have added too early, because clicking it doesn't do anything. So I would have to assume that, like, for some reason the developers have ported over a testing feature into the main game, but they've not ported it entirely over, which is why this question mark just appears here. Or it could just be some unreleased feature that the developers have forgot to remove, and for some reason it came up in this update. Who knows? And it doesn't show up in the vertical upgrades. It only shows up when you don't vertically upgrade your stuff. It's only here. So yeah, the mystery of the question mark. It's a mystery, I guess. Now, when it comes to the question mark here, Menton has speculated that it might be the case where this just explains how the double path works. So here it's meant to explain, okay, so if you upgrade the top path, you can't upgrade the bottom path, and if you upgrade the bottom path, you can't upgrade the top path. However, it's currently broken. So I'd have to assume that the developers, for some reason, added this feature and just never clarified on it, which, you know, kind of makes sense, I guess. Except, well, it doesn't make sense because I mean, to be fair, they haven't told us that they have added a new feature saying, ah, yes, we now have a hover feature explaining what the dual path upgrades mean. To be fair, though, I kind of do see it in this update, given the fact that this update is a new player update in terms of making it more friendly to new players to Tower Defense Simulator. So fair enough that this was added, even though the two towers that have dual paths are the Pursuit and the Hacker Tower. Towers that I don't really think any new player to the game is actually getting anytime soon, but fair enough. Although I am aware that the Hacker Tower is a Game Pass tower. I mean, so is the Pursuit Tower, so any new player to the game who buys those towers and sees two paths may get a little bit confused. Next, there was an issue where the hacker's drone was unable to be affected by timescale, meaning that it moved kind of in real time. However, as you'll notice when I duplicate this tower, the Hacker Tower, the drone, it now does move in real time. As you can see, this drone moving very, very slowly. Previously, it used to move at full pelt. Not a massive bug per se, but they have fixed it so the drone does follow timescales, which everything in the game should follow. Otherwise, there could be some unintended consequences with that. In fact, there are some unintended consequences with things not following timescale, such as burn, such as damage over time. Next, there was an issue where the DJ booths dropped the beat power being boosted by clones that have disappeared. So, for example, when this Necromancer clone disappears, it would still boost the DJ booth because it assumes that there is still a tower here, and meaning that even if you didn't have 25 towers in range of the DJ booth, you could still max out the power that it has, the ability power. However, the developers have now fixed it, so these towers now properly disappear and do not contribute to the drop the beat power ability. Next, I can't really show this off because I have skills enabled, but I will just explain it. So previously, there was an issue with range being displayed far bigger than what it was once skills were disabled in the admin panel. So it is this bug report here, having skills on, off, and then turning them back on and off again in Sandbox using the Sandbox UI causes tower ranges to double, likely caused by the enhanced optic skill. I didn't even realise they added a skills enabled UI feature here, so if I were to continuously turn this on and off, originally the range would double. However, it is no longer the case. The skills no longer double the range, even if the skills are disabled. And finally, I reported on a very good feature that developers have added. When you kill all of the enemies in a wave, the animations for the enemies no longer contribute to waiting around for the skip timer to decrease. However, the developers have reversed this change, so waves no longer end once all enemies die. You need to wait for them all to disappear again. So likely, this is what Menton speculates, that this is related to the Awakened Fallen King dying prematurely, and once the enemy dying occurs, it just ends the game very early. Now, that is just speculative. However, I'd probably give credence to that, given the fact that Menton's probably played this game. No, I wouldn't say played this game longer than me, but he's more knowledgeable, I believe, in this game than me.